It wasn't sex. It had nothing to do with the sex. Even though he raped you continuously, it wasn't the sex he was after. Well, to me, I don't feel it was. It was, he liked to hurt, he liked to see you cry. I remember making a decision at one stage, because I cried all the time. When you cried, you got hit. And he kept telling you to shut up, stop whinging, or I'll give you something to cry about, all of that. But I remember making a decision that I wasn't going to cry in front of him. And that is why I think he hated me more than the rest, because I wouldn't cry.
I remembered an incident where he abused me anally, and the pain was excruciating, and I was crying and asked him to stop. I remembered being sickened at how he could abuse me, how he could hurt me so much, how he could carry on abusing me while I was crying. And that seemed even worse than the abuse, because then I couldn't convince myself that he cared about me. I tried to tell a priest once. I can't remember exactly, but I'm sure my father told me to confess my sins in church, and it took a long, long time for me to actually get up the nerve to do that, but I remember finally getting up the courage, and I went into the confessional and I told the priest that my father was abusing me, and I thought that was me finished with it. I thought, that's it, I got it said. I finally took all the guts I had to say it. Eventually he said, look, when he realised I was frightened and I wasn't telling him anything else, he said, look, the best thing you could do, he said, is come back to me with your father. And I couldn't have imagined my father, no way. I couldn't have even told him.
I remember going to a doctor once and telling him, and he was my father's doctor, and he said to go home and not to worry about it, and he'd sort him out that he was due to come in next week and see him, and I never heard any more about it.
Because you're so very badly damaged, your self-image is nil. So everybody builds up an image. Everybody does. Nobody is what they seem. But because we're all individuals, my image was the clown. I always went around smiling. Any picture I have as a child and all, I look extremely happy. You'd have no idea that there was any abuse going on.
So I became a tomboy. And he'd be out playing football and he'd come out to the door and click his fingers and upstairs, and then he had to go straight back out and play. So when I went back out, I disconnected. What happened in here had nothing to do with me. It wasn't me. That was somebody else. That was the dirty bitch. That was the one who was disgusting and filthy, and that's the one I didn't know. The one outside was totally different, and a totally different person.
I don't ever remember standing up and telling him no. But I do remember it just stopped. It was like, I don't know how I felt. I remember feeling rejected. It was like he didn't love me anymore, and I never took that as love, but that's the way I think I felt. That I couldn't understand it. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where do I go from here.
In 1988, when Constance Nightingale spoke about her abuse on The Late Late Show, her story shook the Kavanaghs. After years of denial, they began to face the reality of their own past. Joyce urgently sought expert help. That help was not available. She had to join a year-long waiting list.
I don't remember all the incidents.
During that time, an incident outside of the immediate family circle was to have a profound effect on the Kavanaghs.
A cousin of mine tried to commit suicide because he abused her. And her mother and father decided to tell my mother. And that was a couple of years ago. That's how it came out. He told my mother. My mother didn't know about us at the time, but we assumed she did and talked about it. And that's how it all came out.
I was shocked, surprised, disgusted. How could anybody do that to a child? We sent for a priest to come up to us. First thing you look for is, who do you go to? Priest, doctor. You got the priest down. He said take him back. He's old man, he won't do any harm, he's past it. And he said, won't you take him back? And I said, no, never, he'll never come back here.
And he never did. Confronted by his family, their father admitted what he had done and expressed regret. But for the Kavanagh sisters, it was too little, too late. With their mother's support, they made what was still a difficult decision, to prosecute their own father. They began proceedings against him in 1989.
If anything happened, I felt we were going to get the blame. And I felt we hadn't really got a choice. It was something we had to do. And I felt together we could do it. I mean, the strength between the whole lot of us was unbelievable. Like, we might have been real weak on our own.
I never wanted anybody to feel and suffer the way I did. I didn't want him to pay for what he did in that respect. I wanted him to be sorry. And I wanted him to say he was sorry. And it's not that I would have taken it away. That's all I wanted from him. I didn't want him to suffer because I knew what it was like to suffer. So what the judge did, he actually took all the statements back and read them himself. He came back then with a verdict and he locked him up for 7 years.
And what else could you do with him, only lock him up?
And somebody said, that's it, he's going to be put away.
He was staring at me. I knew he was staring at me.
We had no choice anyway. It was taken out of our hands.
Finally, there's justice.
I remember feeling there's nothing he can do.
He felt we were his property.
He's still dangerous.
His father only by name.
It's a crime against nature.
I paid my dues to him. I owe him nothing.
Prison isn't the answer to anything, as far as I can see.
This is really a crime that has to be punished.
Terrified I was. I know I couldn't speak properly.
There's no punishment bad enough.
He always thought he didn't do us any harm because there was no scars anywhere.
But I remember feeling safe.
We were just elated.
Now, society may blame, may be very punitive, may be very removed, maybe a little bit hostile to the actual hearing of these experiences, and may not really respect the courage that it's taken for this family to do what they're doing, and may not respect in some ways, the gift that the family is giving.
The one thing therapy gave me was being able to say it wasn't me, I did nothing. He did it all, I was a victim. He did everything. And it was great to just say, I did nothing, I was innocent. He was the big baddie.
And it really helped me to put the blame where it belonged and get my life back together and start thinking good of myself.
But I am getting better. I've learned so much since he's gone that I will have a decent lifestyle when I go with this.
I don't like saying forgiving him. Like, maybe it's healthy to say I forgive him, but I really don't feel that forgiving is the right word. I can let him go, though. I can just get rid of him out of my life. He's taken up too much. He's taken enough. He's not getting any more. And I suppose in that way you could say forgiven. I just feel it's letting go.